All right, let's dive straight into this explainer and completely shatter the illusion of flashy, consumption-based wealth. We live in a world that is frankly obsessed with the appearance of being rich. You know, the luxury brands, the new cars, but the data, decades of studying actual millionaires, tells a completely different and honestly, a way more fascinating story about what it actually takes to build true net worth. Imagine you're at a dinner party. You're looking at two people who are the exact same age, with similar degrees, working similar jobs. The guy on the left, he looks incredibly wealthy. I mean, huge salary, a leased luxury car sitting out in the driveway, dripping in designer clothes. But the reality behind the scenes, his retirement account couldn't even survive 2 years of actual retirement. Meanwhile, the person on the right is dressed modestly, drives an older car, never really talks about money. But secretly, they're a stealth millionaire sitting on a net worth of over $4 million. From across the room, you'd never be able to tell them apart. But structurally, their financial lives are literally worlds apart. Now, here's a stat that is absolutely going to blow your mind. A staggering 80% of millionaires in America are first-generation wealth accumulators. Think about that. 8 out of 10. They didn't inherit a dime, no trust funds, no lottery tickets. They built the whole shebang from scratch. It completely destroys that old myth that you have to be born rich to die rich.
And this really hits home when you look at what they drive. If you stop someone on the street and ask, hey, what kind of car does a millionaire drive? They're going to say Mercedes, BMW, maybe a Porsche. But actual high net worth households, their top vehicles are incredibly standard, rock-solid, reliable brands, Toyotas, Hondas, and Fords. They simply aren't throwing cash at status symbols just to impress a total stranger at a red light.
So that stealth millionaire driving a 7-year-old Toyota Camry, they aren't making a sacrifice. They're not suffering. They're actually operating like an apex financial predator who calculated the compounding cost of depreciation. They know a car is a depreciating asset that sheds a massive chunk of its value in just the first 3 to 5 years. So they buy quality and they hold on to it.
Basically, replacing a perfectly good, functioning car every 3 years just because a new body style came out isn't a lifestyle upgrade. It is literally a direct wealth transfer from your personal net worth straight into the dealer's pocket. And when you factor in the lost investment returns on that money over, say, a 30-year period, constantly upgrading cars can easily cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost wealth. It's wild.
You know those "I'm not a robot" checkboxes on websites? Well, it's time to prove we aren't algorithmic consumers in real life, programmed by society to mindlessly buy the newest shiny object just to keep up with the Joneses. The true millionaire has already checked that box. They've completely broken out of that consumer programming.
Okay, let's move on to Section 1, the Wealth Diagnostics, evaluating your true net worth. Researchers who worked on the classic Millionaire Next Door studies actually break people down into 2 very distinct camps. On one side, you have the PAWs, the prodigious accumulators of wealth. These are the folks quietly building true financial independence. On the flip side, you have the UAWs, the underaccumulators of wealth. Now, these people might have massive incomes, but they are totally trapped, constantly grinding just to fund a high-status facade. And you can figure out exactly where you stand right now with a beautifully simple little formula. Just take your age, divide it by 10, and multiply it by your pre-tax income. That number is your expected net worth. So, say you're 30 years old pulling in $100,000 a year. 30 divided by 10 is 3 times 100K. You should be sitting on about $300,000. If your actual net worth is way below that number, you're probably operating as an underaccumulator. Which brings us to a huge misconception. High income does not equal high wealth. Just because someone makes a massive salary or lives in a gated neighborhood absolutely does not mean they are wealthy. In fact, a lot of high-income earners are secretly drowning in credit card debt and massive car payments. They're generating a ton of cash, sure, but they failed to keep any of it. Remember, true wealth isn't about what you spend, it's about what you keep.
All right, jumping into Section 2, the blueprint, steps to a millionaire mindset.
The sources map out this incredibly solid 6-step blueprint to completely rewire your mindset. It takes you all the way from deep self-examination right down to the daily grind of keeping an actionable plan alive. Let's be clear, this is not some get-rich-quick scheme. It is a fundamental shift in how you operate. Let's break these down. So, Step 1 requires you to ruthlessly examine yourself. You've got to strip away all the societal noise and look at your core values. And tied directly to that is Step 2, figuring out your passion. Now, why does passion matter for net worth? Because building wealth is a decades-long grind, right? It takes relentless energy. And you only get that kind of sustained energy from doing work you actually care about. If you hate what you do, you're going to burn out way before you ever hit those financial goals. Next up, you've got to build an ironclad mindset. Nearly every single self-made millionaire insists that extreme frugality and absolute self-discipline are the absolute bedrock of their success. It's about gaining control, breaking bad habits, thinking strategically before making any big move. They live below their means, not because anyone is forcing them to, but because it's fundamentally who they are.
And you know where all that discipline usually leads? To something that data calls unglamorous entrepreneurship. Most of these wealthy folks didn't build the next big Silicon Valley app, and they aren't Wall Street bankers. They own boring but highly profitable businesses. Auto dealerships, beverage distributors, paving contractors. They found a need in the market and they applied that intense discipline to serving it.
Check this out.
While self-employed people make up less than 20% of the workforce, they account for nearly 2/3 of all millionaires. Owning a business is undeniably one of the most proven pathways to accumulating massive wealth. Yes, they take on the risk, but at the end of the day, they control the asset.
But they don't just play offense, they play amazing defense. They prioritize passive investing, holding on to publicly traded stocks for the long haul to avoid massive tax hits. And even better, they build what is famously known as the go-to health fund. Imagine having a savings cushion so massive you could comfortably march into your boss's office today, quit, and not work for a decade without sweating it. That is the ultimate flex. Not a Rolex, but total absolute autonomy.
Finally, we land on step 6. You have to maintain this strategic lifestyle every single day. It's about tracking your progress, monitoring those balance sheets, and just continuing to make small, frugal choices. It's working out at home instead of paying for a luxury gym. It's skipping the drive-thru. It's intentionally choosing to be financially boring on a daily basis so that you can be financially spectacular over a lifetime.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take a hard look at your own habits, your spending, and your mindset, and ask yourself this one provocative question. Are you building actual wealth, or are you just looking like you are? The choice between being a stealth millionaire and an algorithmic consumer is totally in your hands. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.